Hello everyone watching and welcome to my channel. My channel is Bird's Eye View and I take a bird's eye view look at things mostly through the usage of maps. In this video, I'm going to be explaining why Russia needs to conquer the cities of southern and eastern Ukraine in order to hold their annexation referendums. So let's start with February 24th. On February 24th, Russia invaded Ukraine, and they immediately tried to take over key cities in northern and central Ukraine, such as Sumy, Chernihiv, and of course the capital, Kiev. They failed in all three of these. The inability of Russia to take those three cities meant that Russia would not be able to hold annexation referendums, the same way they had in Crimea and are currently planning to in Luhansk and Donetsk. This is because, in order to hold annexation referendums, in Russia's view, Russia needs to convince their citizens, or at least some of them. They don't need to have a majority of their citizens agreeing, but they need to have some citizens agreeing so there's not massive amounts of popular unrest and pushback as we saw in the early days of the invasion. In order for them to convince their citizens, they have to, of course, control the territory. You can't hold a referendum in territory you don't control. And, of course, the Russian people wouldn't believe in a supposed referendum that didn't include major cities. For example, Russia could not hold a referendum on Ukraine returning to Russia if they don't control Kiev. And it's the same thing in eastern and southern Ukraine. In Crimea, back in 2014 when Russia took over, Russia had already successfully taken control of all of Crimea. And this allowed them to just say that, yeah, they voted for us with 99% vote. Now, while that referendum was simply not legal and also definitely falsified, there is some doubt as to whether Ukraine's side would have won even in a fair referendum, with Crimea having a majority of ethnic Russians and ethnic Russian speakers. Now, that is different in the eastern Ukraine and the Black Sea coast regions, where while there are sizable Russian minorities, there are Ukrainian majorities. Russia has taken complete control of the Luhansk Oblast, and therefore it is likely for Luhansk to be the first major oblast of Ukraine to be reabsorbed into Russia since Crimea. Russia owning all of Luhansk as well as the capital means that it is supposedly legitimate in the eyes of their citizens, and it is very easy for them to convince their citizens that, yeah, we took this territory and now the people there want to join us. But this is not the case in other regions they've tried to take. While they have Donetsk, the main city in the Donetsk Oblast, and they also have taken Mariupol, they still don't have some of the other cities in that region, particularly in northern Donetsk. Additionally, in Kharkiv Oblast, they don't have Kharkiv itself, which means that they can't claim that they allowed all people there to vote, because you can't allow all people to vote if the largest concentration of people isn't even able to vote. However, Russia has recently announced that they plan to hold two referendums, one in the region of Kherson and the other in Zaporizhia. I'm going to talk about Zaporizhia first because it is the most breaking news. In Zaporizhia, the Ukrainians have essentially held on barely to the city, but they've lost much of the oblast. The oblast, realistically, that Ukraine controls only contains Zaporizhia and a few of the surrounding villages. And Russia, at least previously, was making some progress towards taking the city, but the Ukrainians seem to have stalled them, which raises the question, how does Russia plan to hold the referendum there? If Russia truly wants to hold a referendum there, they obviously must control the capital of that oblast. But Russia doesn't. So one theory is that Russia would suddenly attack and seize it and hold a quick referendum. Another theory is that Russia is simply saying this because they want the Ukrainians to go and move troops there to defend Zaporizhzhia so that they can hold Kherson. As I described in my last video, the Ukrainians blew up the bridge that linked the west bank of the Dnieper with the east bank in Kherson, and they have done a lot of damage to a second bridge that is slightly farther east. This means that once this second bridge is knocked out, Russia can only use pontoon bridges, which are not very efficient if you want to bring tanks across or artillery across to the west bank. This means that Russia would essentially have to go from Crimea and southeastern Ukraine, which is already occupied, through Zaporizhzhia and all the way through the railroad if they want to get to Kherson. This is unlikely to happen. Russia also wants to hold a referendum in Kherson, and this seems to be, at this point, more likely even than Donetsk. While Donetsk and Luhansk were ostensibly the two regions that Russia wanted to take from Ukraine at the start of the war, Russia, it is made clear now, is planning to take over all of eastern Ukraine and the Black Sea coast. They have attacked Odessa through bombing, and they have announced that they are going to supposedly protect Transnistria, which is a breakaway de facto state in Moldova. In Kherson, almost the entire region is controlled by Russia, and it seems that Russia's time to hold a referendum is running out. Ukraine has made numerous announcements that they are about to attack somewhere, and satellite imagery has shown Ukrainian military units gathering in Mykolaiv, which is definitely the quickest way to get to Kherson. If Ukraine is able to take back Kherson, Russia cannot hold a referendum there, which means that Russia needs to hold it sooner rather than later because, as I already explained, Russia is going to have a very difficult time supplying ammunition and tanks and heavy weaponry across to the West Bank. In a scenario where Russia essentially lost control of the West Bank of the Dnieper, Ukraine could establish a defensive line there in the south of the country, which would prohibit Russia not only from holding referendums in Kherson, but would also likely harm their efforts to hold referendums in Zaporizhzhia, as if the Ukrainians were able to defend there, they could launch small counterattacks in front of Zaporizhzhia along the river, as the Ukrainians would by then be able to seal it through their control of Kherson. So that is pretty much all the breaking news out of Ukraine. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment what you think will happen next. Thank you for watching.